What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're discussing some of the new January transfer signings, especially those that have come in over the last couple of days. Are they going to be good from an FPL point of view? How do they affect the teams they've moved to? Will defenses improve? Will attacks improve? That kind of thing. So if you do enjoy it, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Let's jump into it. This is going to sound a little bit controversial, but out of all the players that have signed over the last couple of days, Weghorst, and that is the pronunciation I'm going with for now, I will learn these names as we go, he might just be the most realistic player that we're actually going to put into our teams for lots of different reasons, right? Obviously, you've got Van der Beek and Ali, and you've got new Newcastle players and stuff like that. But if we're talking about nailed-on players with good numbers, double game week potential as well, he is right up there. 6.5 million is not a bad price. And I know what you're thinking. This is Chris Wood all over again. But Chris Wood was at least a solid striker that scored, 10 plus goals a season. And Weghorst, his career expected goal involvement numbers are a little bit better than what Chris Wood's were at 0.53. Now, obviously, as always, players transitioning into the Premier League or any new league, to be honest, it doesn't necessarily work out straight away. And while Newcastle might not have the better striker, right? You might say that Weghorst is better than Chris Wood. At least Chris Wood is proven in the Premier League, right? So I'm sure they're kind of happy about that. But if he transitions well, if he hits the ground running, he might be a good option for 6.5 million. Now, always with your player picks and stuff like that, I'm not saying you rush out and buy him. I'm not saying you sell Ronaldo and Antonio and Calvert-Lewin and Watkins and go out and buy Weghorst. But they do have 4 fixtures to rearrange, Burnley. So they got Spurs, Villa, Everton and Leicester. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know exactly when they're going to go in. But if we get into a situation where they've got kind of 2 double game weeks over the span of maybe 2 or 3 weeks, then suddenly you get a lot of extra fixtures. A player at 6.5 should be nailed, I would assume. Decent numbers, might have penalties, and he suddenly looks like an okay option. So, as always, when I go through these players on this list, it's not going to be about they're 100% a buy right now or 100% in ignore. It's not really as, clear cut as that. I would say keep an eye on him. Yes, I don't want to buy him for Man United, Liverpool and Chelsea, but if somewhere in between he has a couple of double game weeks put in, who knows? Maybe we go for him. So numbers good price, should be nailed, should replace Chris Wood, who I thought was an okay option, if not an exciting one. I think he's a possible decent FPL option, but not right now. So I think it's probably fair to say that as an overall transfer window, Newcastle probably had the best one for any Premier League club, right? The amount of upgrades they made to their kind of first 11, all 5 players on this list, and I know Trippier and Wood have already played minutes, right? But we'll talk about them as a whole anyway. All 5 players will probably be in their first 11. The only one that maybe has a little bit of an asterisk next to them is Chris Wood, just because if they play one up front, when Callum Wilson's fit, there's a bit of competition there. But these are all really solid signings. The one I want to talk about first of all is Guimarães, right? Who I'm probably pronouncing wrong. Let me know in the comments below. But he looks absolutely class. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've seen him play loads, but I know he was courted by a lot of clubs. I think a lot of people were surprised that he went to Newcastle. And again, if you go on to FB Ref, it doesn't necessarily tell you everything about a player. Obviously, you need to watch them as well, but it gives you a pretty good profile of what they're like. And to me, he looks like a bit of an all-rounder. So some of the things that stood out, very good at progressing the ball through passing and through carrying the ball as well, dribbling, etc. So that's really going to help Newcastle in attack. To get the ball from back to front, he's going to be good at that. Bit of creativity in there as well. Not much goal threat. I mean, he is only priced at 5 million. I wouldn't expect him to be an FPL option, but it's what he does for the rest of the team. And then lots of pressures, lots of tackles as well. So a bit of an all-rounder. And the thing I like about FB Ref is it shows you similar players. So here's his profile. What other players have similar profiles? And these are some of the players listed. So you've got Kovacic, who's been brilliant for Chelsea when he's been fit this year. Verratti, class. Kante, class. Thiago at Liverpool, class. Kimmich, class. These are all really good players. Some of them you would even say world-class players, and his profile is similar to them. Obviously, he's coming to a new league. He's coming to a team that are in a relegation battle that might not last for much longer, but they are. So it might be more difficult. We'll have to see how he kind of transitions to playing for someone like Newcastle instead. But he looks brilliant, and I think he really is going to help Newcastle, right? Again, from what I can see from looking at his profile. So arguably, having someone like that in midfield might help the defence. But what also helps the defence is overhauling 3 out of 4 of your back 4. So now they've got Targett can play left back. I'm sure Burn's going to go in as a centre back. Unless they start playing 5 at the back, Maybe he plays as a left centre-back like he has at Brighton. He's also obviously played left wing-back as well. But Target is clearly going to be the left-back, Burn centre-back, and obviously you've got Trippier right-back as well. So that's a pretty big overhaul because Newcastle defence has been poor. So from an FPL point of view, I think you look at the fixtures, they're not amazing, they're not awful, but they're not great fixtures either. I don't think any of these signings mean we rush out and buy Newcastle players, but I'm really intrigued to see whether Eddie Howe can get that defence performing better. Because right now, if I look at a list of fixtures, then, you know, Burnley at home, Watford at home, Norwich at home, Newcastle at home, these are all really solid fixtures to have your attackers playing in. Is that going to be the case for Newcastle? I don't think we should completely change our opinion about them until we see them play a little bit. But the signings they've made are pretty decent. Like Target and Burn, okay, you might not say they're the standout players from the teams they've come to, but they have got Premier League experience. And obviously Gomes as well just looks brilliant as well. Again, the transition to the Premier League, how good will it be? How quick will it be? But Newcastle are going to be a different team now. Like 5 of their first 11 could be different from what they were a month ago. So yeah, I'm interested. I think Chris Wood is a solid player, but the fixtures would have to align again. We've only got 3 forward spots, so there's a lot of competition there. So I don't think Chris Wood's someone I'm looking at. But defender maybe. You know, Burn, if he's playing week in, week out, 4.4 million, could be cheap if the Newcastle defence is suddenly good. I won't be rushing out to buy them, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on them. Alright, it's fair to say that Liverpool fans are excited about this one. Luis Diaz has come in, been priced at 8 million. And I think, to be honest, right, like a lot of players on this list that we're talking about today, they're not necessarily FPL options straight away, but it's what's the impact going to be to the rest of the team. So I think up to this point, right, you've had Firmino, Jota, Salah and Mane. They've kind of been the 4 that we've expected to play in that front 3 most weeks, right? And yes, they've got other players that can play there, but they tend to just get used in cup games, final 10 minutes, 20 minutes or something like that. Very rarely do they start, whereas Diaz is quality enough that he could kind of not necessarily start week in, week out, but could provide a bit of competition, could let Klopp rest someone like Mane a little bit more often, maybe Salah as well. I did look at where Diaz has played over the last 3 seasons, and apart from one game on the right-hand side, like the front 3, where Salah would obviously play, he's played every single other game on the left. Now, Klopp might change that around. He might play him on the right sometimes. Maybe he'll even play him through the centre. Who knows, right? Klopp may change the way that he plays. But right now, it looks like he's got a little bit more competition for the left. So it is more like Mane, not necessarily a replacement, but more of a backup. And maybe, you know, Salah and Mane are not getting any younger. At some point, they will need replacing. Maybe this is where Diaz comes in. Some people did point out to me on Twitter, this does negatively affect Jota a little bit. Although Jota is competing with Firmino, he can play on the left as well. He hasn't done that much this season. But obviously now, if Jota's not playing because Firmino's playing and Mane needs a break, Klopp may just play Diaz instead. So it might reduce Jota's minutes a little bit. So that's something to take into account. At 8 million, I think that's a really good price. I know a lot of people on Twitter think this is overpriced. I'd completely disagree, especially if you think about the way that FPL kind of have to price players and how they do price players. It's more the price is based around their ability. What are they capable of when they play? Now, you can say he's not nailed on, so 8 million is too expensive, but 6 million would be too cheap, because if he's not nailed on, you're not going to buy him anyway, because you want Trent, you want Salah, and then you probably want Robertson or Jota if they're going to get more minutes. So you've got 3 spots anyway, so don't pretend that you're going to buy him at 6 million if he's not starting. If Mane gets injured and Firmino gets injured, so Jota's playing through the middle every game, Salah's playing on the right every game, there's a free spot. But if Diaz suddenly starts playing week in, week out, 6 million's far too cheap. Everyone will just buy him. It's too easy to do. So forget that Jota was cheaper at the start of the season. Jota was underpriced, right? He should have been more expensive. He definitely will be next year. Luis Diaz at 8 million is a perfectly fine price. If he becomes nailed on at any point, he will be straight into a lot of people's teams. And obviously, so we're going to depend on, you know, if you've got double defence and Salah, maybe you don't rip that up to get Diaz, but you could do it. I think fixtures-wise, obviously, they've got the blank in 27. We're not really sure how much he's going to start over the next few weeks, so he's not really an FPL option, I would say. But the numbers are looking good. We know he's pretty good. That's probably underselling it a bit. We know he's a good player. We know he's going to provide a bit of competition, but he's probably going to impact more the players that we were already looking at, like Mane, maybe not Mane, but like Mane, like Jota, rather than actually be an FPL option himself. But he's exciting, and if there is a few injuries to that Liverpool front 3, he suddenly becomes a massive option at 8 million, because I think it's a pretty good price. All right, Everton. I feel like there's quite a lot to digest here, because not only have they made 5 signings like Newcastle, I don't think they've made as good signings, but they've made 5 signings. They've also got a new manager in Lampard as well. Now, obviously, I've seen him most managing Chelsea rather than managing Derby, so I don't massively follow the Championship or anything like that. And I think he did all right at Chelsea. I don't think that getting Tuchel in was a bad decision. Obviously, he won on the Champions League straight away. But I seem to remember checking the numbers, like the expected goals conceded and stuff like that while he was at Chelsea. And they were all right? They weren't that bad. Now, obviously, he inherited a pretty good squad. I know there was all the talk about how he brought through Mason Mount, he brought through Reece James, and fair enough. But I think Chelsea were doing okay. Maybe the results weren't quite there. So it's hard to... he inherited a good squad, and obviously they continue to do well-ish, not as good as Tuchel. So it's hard to know what to make of him as a manager. Is he going to come in and improve Everton? The one thing I will say is, I don't think he can do any worse. Now, I think Rafa Benitez was a little bit unlucky in how many players got injured. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin has barely played this season, right? That's your main striker gone. Richarlison's been injured at times, Decore as well. They missed a lot of players this season for long periods of time. But I just don't think Lampard can come in and make things worse, right? They've got to be more adventurous in attack. I think Benitez had them kind of pinned back a little bit. Defence, they were still poor as well. So I just don't think things can get worse. So we should be looking at Everton players for the next 3, maybe Newcastle, Leeds, Southampton. But the fixtures long term are not fantastic. Like City, Spurs and Wolves are not great. Obviously, if they get double game weeks, then the conversation's a little bit different. But the main player you're probably looking at is still Calvert-Lewin, who was already there, right? El Ghazi's not going to be nailed. You think about it, unless Lampard changes the formation a lot, it's probably going to be a 4-3-3 or some variation of that. It's going to be a front 3. It's going to be Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin, and then one of Townsend or Gray, right? Probably Gray mostly. So Ghazi's not nailed, so he's not an option. Patterson hasn't started yet. He may be an option at 4.5. I'd really need to see some improvements for that Everton defence before I worry about buying their defenders. And Mikalenko's 5 million, so that's a pretty hard sell. So the two interesting ones really who've come in new are Van der Beek and Dele Alli. Now, a lot of this depends on the formation that Lampard plays, but more importantly, the personnel. Like if it's a 4-3-3 again, that personnel in midfield, because Decore's not fit right now, but when he is, you surely play Allen as well, which means only one of Van der Beek or Dele Alli can play. So they've just been sat on the benches of their previous clubs, Spurs and Man United, and guess what? Now one of them might be sat on the bench as well. Now while Decore's injured, there's a possibility, that Lampard plays Allen as kind of the sit-in midfielder, and then plays both Van der Beek and Dele Alli in front. So he plays with 2 8s. It'd be a bit more like how Man City play, where they have like a holding player like Rodri, and then they have 2 8s, usually like De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva. I'm not saying Everton players are as good as that, but Lampard might go for that to get them both in the team. I think at 6.2 million for Ali and 5.7 million for Van der Beek, they are potentially good options. I would ignore the expected goal involvement numbers for all of these players because they've not had enough minutes this season for it to be relevant. They could be options for Everton with good fixtures, but you're not going to bet on Van der Beek or Dele Alli for the next 3 when they've got City, Spurs and Wolves straight after, not even knowing what their minutes are going to be like and how they're going to play. Dele Alli's becoming that player now. It's a bit like Paul Pogba in some respects, right? And I said this when he played a couple of games under Conte. Well, now he's got a new manager. Maybe it'll be the Dele Alli of old. This is like 2 or 3 years now. We've just not seen anything from him. Van der Beek at Ajax, right? Really highly regarded. Done absolutely nothing at Man United. And you can quite obviously say, well, he's not had enough time or enough game time to show us. But maybe that's because none of these managers think he's good enough. I don't know, right? It's all a bit weird. So I think for Everton, it's very interesting to see what happens. But right now, the only player I'm looking at is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and that is it, right? And that all depends on what happens with other double game weeks and stuff like that as well. Ghazi, Patterson, Mikalenko, not interested at all. Dele Alli and Van der Beek, maybe, but we need to see what Lampard plays first and how he sets them up, who's the most advanced, whether they both play, what their minutes are like. And by that point, you've lost the Newcastle game to see what happens, and you've only got 2 good games left. So I don't think any of these are going to be options. I still think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's the one from Everton. Let's see what Lampard does over the next few weeks. So we're kind of back to pronunciation hell here. I think Bentancur, I think that's pretty much right. And then Kulusevski, possibly. I don't think I've done that too badly, have I? Let me know in the comments below how bad that was. Probably not going to be FPL options, either of these two. And just a quick explanation. I didn't have another player for Spurs to go here because I didn't really sign anyone else in the window that I saw. So I just put a selfie of myself in my Christmas onesie, which, by the way, is very comfortable. But yeah, we'll concentrate on the other two. So Bentancur, I'm sure loads of you know about him already, but you can see from the numbers, right? Not many goals, not many assists. This is a guy so again, I looked at the profiles, very good for pressures, tackles, interceptions. Could be good for Spurs defence, possibly. I looked at the profiles of kind of what other players he's like. According to FBref, you got Højbjerg, who's also at Spurs, Jorginho and Busquets. So they're the kind of players, right? And again, that's not to say that he is as good as those, better or worse or whatever, just similar profiles. You can kind of tell what kind of job he's there to do in the Spurs team. And I'm sure Conte will get him working the best. And I reckon he probably goes straight into the side, but not going to be an FPL option. Kulusevski, the numbers are okay. There's potential there, but a lot of it's going to depend on what formation. I think they've still got Lucas Moura. They've still got Bergwijn. If it's a 3-4-3, there's a lot of competition. Bearing in mind when Kane and Son are fit, they're definitely in the team. So there's only one more kind of wide spot. So Kulusevski, 6 million, like it's an okay price. I was just looking again on FBref. So it's interestingly similar players. One of the players that came up was Lookman and Zaha and Benrahma for Premier League players. So that's the kind of player you're possibly looking at. But then I looked at it for Juventus, right, last year, 20 matches, but he only started 5 times. The previous year was 35 matches, 19 starts. Now, this guy is young. Conte might get the best out of him. He might get him playing week in, week out. The numbers could be good. Goals and assists come. Definitely one to think about. But right now, if Spurs had such a good double game week where I really wanted some Spurs players, then Son and Kane are going to be top of the list and probably a defender. So I'll never write anyone off. Right? I would never say never to any player, but I just don't see these two being too much of an interest for FPL. Bentancur might make the defence better, which would be good for if you go for Lloris or Dyer, or maybe Reguilon starts playing regularly and stuff like that. But Kulusevski taking a spot in midfield, 6 million, you can get Rafinha, Martinelli. You got your spot for Salah, maybe Foden, maybe Jota, etc. I'm just not sure he fits in right now, but obviously we'll keep an eye on him. So I actually recorded most of this video before the prices had dropped for a lot of these players. So I actually guessed for Eriksen that he'd be 6.5 to 7 million. But at the end of the video, I said I wouldn't be surprised if they price him 5.5 to 6. I just wasn't sure if they go what he should be priced at, which is I think 5.5 is fair for him at the moment, or 6.5 to 7 because of what he had done before at Spurs, albeit a long time ago. So I think 5.5 is probably fair. I'm re-recording the bits since we've had the prices in because I do think it makes a little bit of a difference. But I think you have to take Eriksen. There's 2 ways to take this signing, right? First of all, I love it. I think it's my favourite signing. I'm not saying it's the best signing, but it's my favourite signing of the January window because it's great to see him back at a football club, about to hopefully play some competitive football and also be back in the Premier League, right? So that's all great. But we have to look at this from an FPL point of view. The guy hasn't played competitive football since the Euros. Obviously, what happened was a horrible event. I'm sure it was bad enough for those that had to watch. Imagine what it was like for him and his family, etc. So he's not played competitive football for a while. Is he just going to come straight back in and start playing 90 minutes? You'd assume not. When will he start getting starts, let alone, sub appearances? We just can't be sure yet. Now, obviously, you're not bringing him in anyway for Man City, Palace and Arsenal, so you can wait until going to game week 27 and just see what it's about. But I think he's one of those things where people are bored in the international break, right? Because he's it's international break, FA Cup break. People are bored, so everyone's very excited because it's Christian Eriksen at 5.5 million. I've got to be honest, I just don't see him being an FPL option that soon, maybe not even for this whole season. Like if I looked at his goals and assists at Inter Milan, he had 4 goals and 2 assists. That's 6 attack and returns in 43 games. Now I didn't go through and check which ones are sub appearances and stuff like that, but that's pretty low, right? This isn't the same guy necessarily that we remember. Forget about what happened in the Euros. I'm talking even before that, right? So I'm looking here. So 26 games last season, 17 starts, 3 goals. That's it. 17 matches the previous season, 8 starts, 1 goal, 2 assists. The previous one before that was 20 games for Spurs, only 10 starts, 2 goals, 2 assists. So it's not since 2018-19 that he's had a really good season where he's got 20 attack and returns. Now you might say maybe he just needs a new manager, new lease of life back in the Premier League to be playing week in, week out. Maybe that will get the numbers up. But it's been a long time since we've seen that from him. And obviously he's gone through this, incident doesn't really do it justice, but this massive thing in the Euros, he's not just going to come back and keep playing 90 minutes every single week. I don't expect so anyway. I could be wrong, but the good thing is we don't have to buy him straight away anyway. So if he starts, miraculously, playing 90 minutes week in, week out, the numbers look good, he starts getting some goals and assists and stuff like that, 5.5 million could be really good. But in all honesty, if I needed a Brentford midfielder right now, I'd probably just buy Mbomo, to be honest with you. So, I don't know. Eriksen, you can see the expected goal involvement numbers. There was a bit of an outlier there in 2019-20 where he got 0.71. but again, didn't start a huge amount of games. Outside of that, the numbers are just okay. So obviously we remember, a lot of us who don't watch a huge amount of football outside the Premier League remember those days for Spurs when he was brilliant. But right now, I love the nostalgia. I'm really happy he's back. But if I've got my FPL hat on, just don't see him being an option anytime soon. So there we go. Let me know if you're thinking of buying any of these players. I've already had someone tweet me saying they bought Van der Beek before they saw that Dele Alli was coming in. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But is anyone catching your eye? Is there anyone you want to bring in this week or that you're thinking about over the next couple of weeks? Write it down in the comments below. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you are new around here as well. I will probably do my next video on Thursday, and then we'll start ramping up to almost daily as we get towards the deadline. It still feels like forever until the deadline. Like, it's another week away, but we will get another video rolled out on Thursday. Team selection, game week preview, all to come Sunday and Monday as well. So plenty of content to come. Thank you for watching this one. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you again soon.